Yo, what's going on? It's crazy late, and yeah, I'm doing a video, and it's crazy late. I bounced the time around, so all y'all who tuned in, who joined in, I definitely appreciate y'all because my schedule was a little bit off. I was at a movie, then it was raining. I was trying to figure things out, but I figured let me go ahead and get this video done because time is of the essence. Because we're talking about someone who self-inflicted caused their own crash and burn. We're going to talk about Village of Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Now, I did one video on Tiffany Henyard because it was like a Tiffany Henyard train. Anytime a prominent black person kind of crash and burn out is like the trending story. I did one video on her, and it was when she showed up to a Village of Dalton town hall meeting, uh, like she was Nino Brown, but not from the movie New Jack City, from the TV show Martin with a dog and everything. It was ridiculous and something straight out of the Boondocks. But we are going to talk about the new developments today. There was an investigation that was conducted by an external third party. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the feds. Is this lady going to be in a jumpsuit or not? And we're going to go over some of the crimes that she will likely be charged with somewhere down the road. It's already been confirmed months ago that there is a pending FBI investigation. If you're new to the channel, here we talk finances, attorney reactions to current events, all that stuff in between. Always got to toss out a disclaimer for the folks at the Bar Association. I'm a licensed practitioner of law in multiple jurisdictions, but none of those jurisdictions result in me being your personal counselor at law. So if you're looking for legal or financial advice, seek a professional, preferably not somebody on YouTube. Although there are some people on YouTube who are professionals who know what they're talking about. Seek a professional in your area who can give you some guidance, who has a fiduciary obligation to look out for your best interest. And if you get something out of this video, like, subscribe, comment, share. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button, interact, whatever. It is what it is. But hey, I'm not selling you a course, but I am asking for your support, and it's free to do so. All right. So I think everybody probably know who the it's late, so I could cuss. Everybody probably know who the hell Tiffany Henyard is. So before we even dive into the news story, and I'm also pull up the slides that were presented, we're going to give a little bit of a background. Okay, the Village of Dalton is in Illinois. It's a relatively small town. Now, it's interesting because the first thing when you hear all of these stories about Tiffany Henyard finessing the system, you hear all of these stories and see her acting like a Boondocks character and just being loud and flamboyant. Like she really thinks she Big Meech from BFM. But you see all of this stuff. And so the first question I had was, well, let me look up who was her predecessor, who preceded her, who was the mayor before her. And it's actually interesting. They had a gentleman who was mayor before her. At the time he left, the city had a surplus of money. So they had more money than they needed. The interesting thing is when Tiffany Henyard ran for election, she ran on a campaign focused on transparency, and she actually attacked her opponent saying that he wasn't doing the right thing with the money. So it's funny how the pot was calling the kettle black, presumably, even though we didn't know at the time. But that's just kind of the background. Now, from a voting standpoint, a lot of people and I don't know if you all saw the video. I'm not going to play this part, but it was a lady who spoke at the end of this Village of Dalton town meeting where they had the board of trustees meeting, and Lori Lightfoot, former mayor of Chicago, was presenting her findings. Okay, and this lady spoke, and it was actually interesting because she said when election time rolls around in 2025, because that's when they're going to have a challenger to Tiffany Henyard. It's a brother who's actually already on the board of trustees. And I'm gonna just be honest: when you got a mayor who is caught up in a cesspool of of trash like this, that's the perfect time to run against him because the bar is relatively low. All you got to do is not commit blatant fraud. You can kind of probably try to do indirect fraud, and people will be like, "Oh, at least it's not blatant." So it's really a low bar. But this lady at the end of the meeting, after everything was presented to the trustees, she said, "We got to do our due diligence in the village of Dalton and vote for people and do our research. We can't vote for people just because they're black. Do not vote for people just because they're black." And so I was thinking, I was like, yo, did they elect Tiffany Henyard because she was black? And then I was like, that couldn't be the case, because I looked at all the previous mayors, and the village of Dalton is like a country district of Columbia. Damn, there's a bunch of black people. They probably got more black folks than in DC now. But all of their politicians are essentially African American. So I personally don't think that she won the election because she was black. I think the reason that she won the election was she was a black woman. She would have been the first woman mayor. And think about it. As far as a mayor goes, she has a relatively visual aesthetic of a young woman. Not like, like Lori Lightfoot was mayor and Tiffany Henyard is mayor, and they both appear extremely different. Tiffany Henyard is younger. She presents more to what's trendy to the youth. So I think it was the woman ticket that probably got her elected. Now everybody's like, this month, everybody like, this chick gotta go. She's crazy. So let's go ahead. We're gonna dive into this video afterwards. I'm gonna break the video down. And then we're going to take a look at some of the slides to look at the numbers. And the last thing we're going to look at is some of the things about the structure of their government that is just weird to me. It doesn't make any sense. Like I did some research and I was like, okay, like where is their office of inspector general? Who can investigate government officials at the county level, at the city level, at the state level? And they have a really weird kind of organizational structure as a local government. We're going to talk about it, but for now, let's tap into this video so y'all can get the update on what's going on in the wonderful world of Tiffany Henyard, aka Super Mayor, aka City Girl Mayor.
Than $3.5 million in the hole. That's the finding of an investigation into how city officials have been spending village funds. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is leading this investigation into Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
All right, let's pause it right there. We got to pause it right here. I want y'all to take a good look at this image because I literally just talked about this. I don't think Tiffany Henyard was elected because of her blackness, because the village of Dalton always elect black mayors. She's the first black woman mayor. I think the woman thing is what got her through. But also, let's just look at her. Both of these women on the screen were a mayor of a city or are a mayor of a city. One of a very large city, Chicago, one of a very small township. But just to the electorate, Tiffany Henyard, when she ran for office, she presented something that was different and outside of the norm. A black woman who's running could be the first mayor, but she's also young. People like to see youth when it comes to election campaigns. I mean, come on now. We just were on the verge of having an election for president where both candidates was like 10,000 years old. So youth is an asset. Her being a black woman was an asset. I think that's what personally pushed her over the top during the election. I looked actually into her record, what she did beforehand, and I'm gonna be honest, there were some things that didn't seem like good judgment calls, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't think there was anything based on my research that would have gave one to believe that she would be egregious with the amount of abuse of power and fraud and corruption that she would have going on if she won. But I thought that was important. I thought that was pertinent. I talked about how she presented different. Both of these two women on the screen were mayors of a city or a township, but Tiffany Henyard rode the wave of youth and being outside of the norm. Because normally you got elected officials, they older, they gray. Tiffany Henyard looked like, if you was out at a club and you had a shot or two, you might try to buy her a drink and holler at her. Respectfully. All right, let's go ahead and finish this video up.
Our Village funds. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is leading this investigation into Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Our Jermont Terry has been following this for months and joins us live now on the south suburbs with these findings that are just out tonight. Jermont?
Yeah, Joe, mouths dropped when it was revealed that the village has a deficit just over $3 million. For the past 4 months, Mayor Lori Lightfoot has been working, trying to get necessary records. And the records she did get a hold of left many here in Dalton furious and questioning exactly where their tax dollars are going. The community packed this special village meeting to hear firsthand what Lori Lightfoot uncovered into the village's finances.
We have worked very, very diligently, very hard under difficult circumstances to get as much information as we could to share with you.
A limited examination of the books revealed as of May 31st, 2024, the general fund had a negative balance of $3.6 million.
I can imagine all of you are feeling.
Folks shook their heads in disbelief as Lightfoot, the special investigator hired by trustees, showed there's simply no checks and balance with records she found.
If you hear this is fake news, it's not real, no. This is real.
According to the report, credit card spending is out of control.
Receipts for credit card purchases are rarely provided.
And when Lightfoot dug into what money was spent, she found overtime, especially with 2 officers, kept jumping year after year. 2 officers racked up in overtime, nearly doubling their salaries. 1 officer made $108,000, then $114,000 in overtime alone.
I've never seen police be paid that amount of money under no circumstances.
And Deputy Chief Lewis Lacey, who was fired this week, also made a killing in overtime. Check out how much he was paid in overtime since 2022. Last fiscal year, the village paid him $96,000 in addition to his salary.
We've been trying to get these records for the past 2 years. Now we have some idea. Well, we have a big idea.
Lightfoot in her investigation also uncovered spending that just doesn't add up when it comes to municipal spending. The report shows there's $40,000 unaccounted for spent on Amazon purchases.
That's wild.
In a single day.
For what? That's ridiculous. What did they get from Amazon for $40,000?
She probably bought one of those like manufactured.
I've actually been watching it saying, when is the tsunami going to actually hit us and knock the community off its feet? That's what I just think.
So what's next? Lori Lightfoot says that this is only the preliminary investigation, and she still wants to know about specific purchases, just like that $40,000 purchase in Amazon in one day. But keep in mind, Mayor Tiffany Henyard has not helped out in Lightfoot's probe, but likely Henyard will have to talk when the FBI tries to talk to her about the village spending. There's a probe going on federally here in the village. For now, reporting live in Dalton tonight, Jermont Terry, CBS 2 News.
Busy night for sure, Jermont. Thank you very much.
All right, so we got to talk about that a little bit before we even dive in. This is actually like an area that I'm very familiar with. All the folks who maybe new who watching, I appreciate all y'all tuning in. Let me know where y'all tapping in from in the comments. But let me give a little bit of my background before I dive in, so y'all can say, like, because people gonna be like, yo, this dude don't know what he's talking about. But when it comes to government corruption, fraud, investigations, like that's kind of white collar money, gotta track it. I've investigated some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, and I've investigated some of the biggest non-pharmaceutical companies who distribute and manufacture pharmaceuticals that are street pharmaceuticals. I'm talking about narco level stuff. So government officials, goon squad, all of that. So started out as a defense attorney for about 3.5, 4 years. After that, I took a pivot into the inspector general community. That's where a substantial portion of most of my investigation experience came from. What the hell is an inspector general? If you don't know, anytime there's a government program, an inspector general is created. So recently, everybody was doing the PPP fraud. Well, when the federal government passed the bill to put out all the money for the PPP program, it also created money to start an inspector general. And I believe it was called the SIGPER, the Special Inspector General for Pandemic Relief. So anytime there's a government program, there's an Office of Inspector General. Their sole job is to investigate fraud, waste, abuse of government funds, government money, all of that stuff. So of course, that's kind of where my experience is. So when it comes to investigating mayors, politicians, elected officials, appointed officials, I've been there, done that. I've investigated people who are like I've been in investigations where people don't want to do them because they'll say you are flying too close to the sun. What that means is you're investigating somebody who might actually got some pull to damage your career. So, but it's part of the game. So, with that being said, how did Lori Lightfoot get into this role? Because I saw a lot of people just blasting her as mayor, like, yo, she sucked. She was garbage as mayor. Her ability to manage a government is completely different from her ability to conduct an investigation. Let's just keep it a buck. I think if somebody said, hey, is Kamala Harris, do you think she was a better prosecutor or you think she was a better vice president? I would probably say she was a better prosecutor. I don't really know what she did as vice president. I mean, borders are, but that's a whole nother story. But hey, politics aside, you can be not great at one thing, but absolutely great and amazing at something else. And so I think we got to give Lori Lightfoot. I seen a lot of people trashing her because they said she was a trash mayor. Chicago was just a cesspool of crime while she was there. It was kind of a cesspool of crime before she was there, but she does have a background that's consistent with someone who can do this type of investigation. Former prosecutor, she's used to looking at evidence, facts. She probably has a skill set of being able to investigate cases that are financially and money heavy, where you actually got to tracking down the money to see where it's being spent and identify who that money is going to. So we got to give her a little credit on there. And I think, this was a relatively easy investigation because I'm going to just be honest. I don't think Tiffany Henyard and her staff are the smartest in the world at covering up fraud and their corruption. Trust me, I've seen some politicians who are amazing at covering it up. And I'm like, oh, man, this is sketch. But I can't really prove it's sketch. I've investigated politicians like that. These guys don't strike me as the brain trust of just a criminal mastermind syndicate, okay? So that's number one. Number two is, it was interesting because I looked and they do have an inspector general at the state level. So it's actually a possibility that this is already being investigated by the local or the state inspector general's office. I looked it up. I was like, they got to have an inspector general. And the dope thing about an inspector general, most states, most cities, counties have one. But the dope thing about an inspector general's office is an inspector general's office can get access to any records that are within the program that they're responsible for overseeing. Long story short, that means that they can get shit. You don't have to give up the records because they can get the records if the records are related to government spending. So there was a few things that they talked about in this. I'm going to go ahead, and queue up. I'm going to go ahead and queue up some slides so we can dive into a little bit of what was going on over in the village of Dalton and get a good eye on this absolute shit show. And then we're going to talk about what's going on with the feds. Y'all give me 1 minute. All right. Your boy back. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the Village of Dalton preliminary financial overview, okay? Now, it's interesting because, well, let's take a little bit of a pivot real quick. Give me about 5 to 7 minutes real quick so we can lay out the foundation. Okay, Tiffany Henyard is elected. She beats the mayor, the person who was sitting in that seat who left the Village of Dalton with a surplus in funds from a budget standpoint. They were spending less than what they were bringing in taxes, so they essentially had a surplus. Tiffany Henyard gets in. She uses her youth. She uses her woman womanhood and her being a younger African American. She wins 82% of the vote. It was crazy. It was like 85% of the vote. Pretty much nobody voted for whoever the other person was. And she ran on a campaign of transparency and threw some shots at her opponent like, yo, bro, you a little shady with the money, which is wild in hindsight. So what does the super mayor start doing? She started living this perceived big meats lifestyle. She started using government funds to buy billboards. She started using government funds to buy vehicles. She started using government funds that weren't even authenticated correctly. They have some accounts with government funds. If they're used, it has to be signed off by the mayor and the actual board of trustees or a member of the board of trustees. And she would cut a check for something, just sign it herself. And of course, that place is going to be like, yo, we're going to roll with this check. Bank will clear it. Everything went through. So it was kind of wild. There were even allegations. And this is interesting because, yo, shout out to my guy Pocket Watcher with JT. He did a show on this and I called in. But we were talking about racketeering. It may have been a different show, but we were talking about racketeering. It was Tiffany Henyard, now that I think about it. And there's been allegations that essentially she is strong arming or shaking down certain businesses by denying them permits to be able to do what they do to make money in exchange for certain things that are beneficial to her or her staff or her campaign, which is completely illegal. That's racketeering essentially. It's like, yo, we're gonna strong arm you, shake you down. If you don't do this for us, we aren't going to give you this permit to be able to engage in the course of your business. So between that, between overtime, between a lot of stuff, there was just a shit show of allegations, money being spent wrong and improperly. So of course, what happens next? Because the first thing you think about is, yo, if she's doing all this crazy ass wild stuff, why aren't they just trying to get her out of office? And this is the first thing I thought that was a little weird. Let me pull up her Instagram real quick because I want y'all to see this because this is interesting. Let me pull up Tiffany Henyard's Instagram so we can look. But it's already in there. Give me 1 second. Y'all know your boy can't do two things at once. I want to find Tiffany Henyard's Instagram. Let's see. Search. Tiffany. All right, we got her IG up. All right, so, all right, as I was saying, there were a lot of allegations and things going on shady with the money, okay? And so the first thing you would think is, well, why doesn't the board of trustees just get her out of office? And this is the first thing that struck me as odd about the formation of their government, okay? The board of trustees early on were like, yo, you know what? We not feeling this lady. She kind of whack. We need to get her up out of here. Shout out to the first comment of the show, Timothy Womack. Anytime you're broke, Amazon is involved. You just blink at your phone twice and 100 packages will be on your porch tomorrow morning. That's a fact. And the other thing too is the Amazon spending that we'll go into, they said it was for personal use. We're going to dive into that. And I'm going to tell y'all how easy that is to actually find out who had those items, who ordered them, where they was mailed from. Is relatively easy because, again, no offense to Tiffany Henyard and her crew, or cronies or whatever you want to call them, but they aren't the brightest at committing this fraud game. So essentially, this is the first thing that is weird about the Village of Dalton. The board of trustees actually wanted to get Tiffany Henyard up out there. They was like, yo, we're going to go through the process, have a recall so we can try to get this lady out of the office. They actually had secured the votes to get Tiffany Henyard out, but it went before a judge, and the judge said, nah, y'all can't remove her. We can't even challenge her from being removed from office because they messed up the process. Now, that's the first thing that's weird because most city councils, state legislatures, federal legislatures, they have a staff of attorneys, at least one attorney, if it's a small place. And if it's not an attorney, that's for the council. The attorney doesn't represent, well, I guess in this situation, the board of trustees will have an attorney. The attorney doesn't represent the interest of any particular trustee member on the board, but what the attorney does is make sure that the board of trustees are following the procedures correctly. At the federal government level, it's called the parliamentarian. They have a parliamentarian, so when they want to vote on something or veto something, they're like, yo, we got to make sure we're doing this process right. Because if the process isn't done right, we can't get what we want to get accomplished. They had no such thing. Oh, man, this is a lightning bug or something they got in here. But they had no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it. They had no such thing in place. They had no attorney to represent the board of trustees. They had no parliamentarian. So considering that this was a really small town, they really didn't have no clue as to if they were doing the process right to have a recall to potentially get Tiffany Henyard out of office. They didn't do it right, so it didn't work. That's just kind of what happened. No, she not arrested. I thought that thumbnail was indicative of, if you had to ask me, somebody who's been in this game for over 13 years, like, if you want to make a bet with me on if she's going to be arrested or indicted, of course, I probably bet everything that I got. I probably bet everything that I got that she's going to be indicted at some point because this is just too easy. But not arrested yet or currently. At the moment, these are just the results of a preliminary investigation. The FBI is doing a probe. I've worked. I bought it. I've worked a bunch of cases with the FBI, DEA, you name it. I've been on all of these special task force. I've signed search warrants, all of that stuff. Yeah, I would probably bet that it's not going to end well for Tiffany Henyard. She's probably going to get an indictment, and it's going to be one of the easier indictments to get. But because the board of trustees jacked up the process, they didn't have nobody to guide them through the proper way to do the recall. The judge said that it wasn't proper. Hence the reason that Tiffany Henyard is still in office now. And it is what it is. Now, let's go ahead, take a look. Let me pull up some of the. I'm gonna make that big because we want to dive into some of the money. Village of Dalton preliminary financial overview. All right, now we're not gonna go through all of this. I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger. We're not gonna go through all of this, right? Because that'd be wild. But we're gonna go through and find some of the important things that looks at the numbers. And when we get to those things, I'll probably give a brief discussion on how the investigation is going to backtrack to find out what happened to the money and identify who were the persons responsible for it. The first thing that you got to understand, though, as I'm scrolling through this, I want to get to the PowerPoint presentations. All right, cool. Right there. The first thing you got to understand is, I don't know, before we're about to dive into this spreadsheet right here, but let me make that a little bit smaller because before I go in, I want to explain something. Essentially, I've seen this happen. I worked my first 2 jobs. I served at the pleasure of an elected or appointed government official. So typically what happens, and Tiffany Henyard did exactly what the playbook is. Once you come in office, you're like, yo, I got all of these old people who are loyal to the old mayor, and I got my folks I want to put in. What do? You come in, and you don't wipe everybody out immediately because that would just be foolish. You wipe about 70% of that staff out. The other 30% are essential people that you need to keep for at least a year or two till you and your team can understand the lay of the land. Then once you understand the lay of the land, you give them the bump, and now you got your whole regime in. And this is funny. Politicians like loyalty. I know people who work for politicians, and they've told me like, oh, they made me sign like a loyalty oath. Or I worked at a place where a non-disclosure agreement wasn't required to work there. But after they messed with the wrong attorney, we'll just leave it at that. They actually tried to get all of their employees to sign a non-disclosure agreement during the course of employment. which probably isn't even a valid contract because I don't think there's any consideration there, but that's a whole nother story. But it's not uncommon for one person to come in and want to put people who are loyal to them in place. But there's a difference between loyalty and people who actually help you get the mission done. Me, as an attorney, it's my job. The person I'm working for, tell me what you want. If you tell me what you want, I can tell you how to get there or try my best way to get you there. But if I can't get you there, the only way to get there is by taking the legal road. I'm not about to do that shit. Not going to lose my license. But the playbook that she ran was the playbook that all politicians run. You come in, you get your people in, you get people who are loyal to you. So you'll see she hired people in place. She was able to lock the board of trustees out of office buildings, lock them out of computer programs that allow them visibility into finances. That's absolutely batshit crazy that was even allowed to happen, in my personal opinion. Over under on how long she's going to be free. Let's see. I want to say they said the FBI probe started. The FBI probe started, I think, a couple of months ago. I don't know. Well, it depends because I think she's going to be free for a while because I seriously doubt if she's the mayor, she probably doesn't have a criminal record. I didn't run a report, but I'm saying I'm going to assume that she doesn't have any prior contact with the criminal justice system, number one. Number two, because she's a politician and she probably likely has no prior conduct with the criminal justice system, even if she's indicted, she's not gonna. I would be shocked if she actually get arrested on these charges for the most part. Now, I'm not saying they won't make an example out of her, but for the most part, when you have a politician who's under an investigation and that indictment comes down, most times they're out for until the trial. So if the question is how long is she going to be free, the answer is I would probably say a while. She's going to be free a while because I just don't see her ever going in custody. The only way she'll go into custody is after she's indicted, if she take a plea agreement or if she goes to trial and loses. But before then, she'll be out walking amongst everybody. So that could be that could be years. I mean, I've had investigations that lasted years because you just wanted to be wrapped up on a bow, on a silver platter, so to speak. NDAs need compensation to be valid. All right, let me answer this question. Let me hit these comments before I dive into this chart real quick. A non-disclosure agreement is essentially a contract. In order for any contract to be valid, it has to be offer and acceptance and consideration. Well, we know what an offer is. Hey, I'm offering you this in exchange for that. We know what acceptance is. Well, I'm accepting the offer. Well, what is consideration? Consideration is one side, it's the exchange of something of value. So, and I've researched this, trust me, because I've been in a whistleblower situation before. A non-disclosure agreement where you don't get anything is a non-valid contract because there's no consideration. You aren't getting anything. So if I said it, so the chances of that NDA standing up in court are very slim, very low. If I said, yo, you working for me and I want you to sign this non-disclosure agreement and you're already employed, you're already working. I said, you sign this non-disclosure agreement and you sign it. If it's challenged in court, the first thing I would say is this is an invalid contract because there's no consideration. Now, let's look at a different scenario when NDAs are passed out. Okay, DFD, we're going to let you go. But in exchange for letting you go, we're going to give you 12 weeks of pay if you sign this non-disclosure agreement. Now, in that situation, that non-disclosure agreement is probably going to be valid because there's consideration. I agree not to disclose certain information, and you agree to pay me this money. We each are getting some type of benefit. In the other situation, if I get you to sign an NDA while you're already employed and it's not attached, what are you getting out of it? You already get your salary from what you work. A consideration would have to be you sign this NDA and we give you a $5,000 bonus in exchange for it. So generally an NDA where you don't receive anything of value is going to be a void contract because there's no consideration. You got to get something for consideration. Loyalists as head of police have total control of the town. Yeah, the chief of police was wild. They fired him and this dude still showed up to work. And she went old school because I'm going to just be honest. In this day and age, like back in ancient Rome, you wanted to have when you wanted to be a politician in charge, you wanted to make sure you had like the Praetorian Guard, who's the special elite Roman military on your side, because they'll do your bidding. In this day and age, having the police on your side is less important, probably more so in a small ass town like this, though. I think you're right. This small ass town is probably more so important. I think, if I were like, hey, in a major city like a DC, Chicago, the chief of police being on my side is probably the least important of my concerns personally. I think the people you want on your side is you're going to want some people from the city council. You're going to want to have a couple of guaranteed votes in your pocket. Maybe someone from the treasury on the fiscal side of the game, somebody on the HR side of the game, definitely at the attorney general's office. Like, those are the things that's important. But in this small ass town, I think you're right. The police probably have a little bit more leverage because it's just a small town. I saw a video of a lady saying she had a record. Why did you vote for her? Okay, if she did got a record. Oh, so hey, she may have a record. Now I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna Google it before we get out here. But people don't care about records. People don't care about records the same way people don't care about policies. Nobody care about policies. Like, even right now, like, okay, we're not gonna get too political, but like, ain't nobody talking about what the hell they gonna do. Like, what the hell are y'all planning on doing? Like, I'm a policy guy, okay? I'm not just gonna be like, oh man, they suck over there. Okay, yeah, they might suck over there, but how are you going to not suck? Give me something. So, but people don't care about criminal records. People don't care about policy. People like to vote for things that they like and things that they can relate to. So if a bunch of black folks, they're like, oh man, this young high-speed sister, she's gonna bring some new ideas to the community. Everybody, let's just give her support. And one of the reasons they gave her support is because this is one thing Tiffany Henyard is great at. Y'all may give her some flack. Hold on, I'm gonna get back to the slides. But y'all may give her some flack. But let's look at her IG real quick. Tiffany Henyard has a quality that's probably equal to former President Donald Trump. Former President Donald Trump, whatever you want to say about him, he's historically has been good at marketing. He'll throw his name on a building, a water, a golf course, and people will give it a value that may not necessarily be warranted. And I think Tiffany Henyard is the same way. Look at it. It's all festivals, bright pictures. She has a lot of back to school fest. She using all of the town's money to pay her cronies overtime, to make unauthorized and potentially illegal purchases. But she finessing everybody by just saying like, hey, back to school fest, come to this parade, get some hot dogs. Hey, we're going to have a place for the kids to play. It's the old smoke and mirrors thing. Think about it. They park at Dalton. Hey, I think she's great at marketing. She has a lot of festivals, a lot of bright colors. People are simple. I mean, I'm gonna just keep it a buck. People are simple. We like shiny shit, okay? People are like, ooh, shiny. Like, people go to a festival, get all caught up in whatever you're giving out free, but don't look at the fact that this city is probably screwed over for like the next 5 to 7 years, because they essentially are going to be, I mean, they aren't bankrupt yet, but essentially they are bankrupt. Now let's go and take a look at these slides. All right, I'm gonna make this big. The general fund balance has been declining. Okay, if we can see on the left, as of April of 2022, $5.61 million was in the fund. As of 2023, 2.6 million. 2024, April, negative 3.38 million. May of 2024, negative 3.65 million. This is crazy as hell. And remember, they started out when she was elected, I believe, in 2001, early 2002, something like that. They started out with a surplus of funds. So you can see they had a surplus of funds. Increase in expenditures. The village average monthly expenditures have increased nearly 30% from 1.9 million to 2.5 million since fiscal year 2022, May 2021 through April of 2024. This is how much money they're spending. Now, keep in mind, one of the things that haven't happened, the Village of Dalton is actually required to submit a financial audit and accounting to the state every year. They haven't done it any year since Tiffany Henyard's been in office. It's funny, that's why I said unaudited. So in fiscal year of 2022, the general fund average expenditures was 1.9 million. Then it increased in 23 to 2.35 million, and 2024 2.5 million. So the amount that they're spending is increasing. Now this is interesting because typically when you end up in the red, you're either spending too much or you're not bringing enough revenue in. Well, how does the Village of Dalton bring in revenue? From taxes, property taxes, sale taxes, local taxes, all of that stuff. They're actually bringing in more taxes each year annually. It's just the spending is getting out of control with everything from the overtime and all the other nonsense that they got going on over at the Village of Dalton. It's an actual fucking shit show, personally. Exactly what I said. It looks like racketeering. Yeah, because there were a couple articles out there. Let me see if I can find one real quick. Let me see. I'm sure if I Google it. Let's see. Strong. I'm gonna put in strong arms local businesses. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. See, that's the first thing that pop up. This shit is absurd. Like, yeah, this shit is not real talk. Like, this is actually like it's crazy to be this blatant. Like, I've investigated people in the highest level of governments, and like, hey, all politicians engage in a little bit of self dealing, but you're not supposed to make it be blatant like self dealing. You got to at least try. You got to at least try to give the appearance that I'm not self dealing. I'm actually doing what's in the best interest of people. Let me show y'all what popped up. And I agree. I think it's definitely racketeering. I literally just did a search for Tiffany Henyard strong arms local businesses. And this was one of the articles that popped up. Illinois mayor shut down local businesses that don't contribute to her campaign, dresses like a movie gangster. This is the article I did. Y'all can tell I've been looking for some new running shoes because these Nike 270s popping up. But yeah, this is the article that I discussed where she came to the board meeting dressed like Nino Brown. And that's definitely racketeering. The other thing, too, is this is actually going to be a really good RICO case because the type of fraud that she's engaging in, you can't engage in it alone. You need co-conspirators to be able to push things through. If I'm a government official and I want to get, let's say, like, I can't generally, it would be odd if this is the case, but this is a small ass town. They seem a little rural and how they do their processes. But generally, if I'm a government official, I want to make a purchase, even though my office has a certain amount of funds to make purchases, and I could be the head honcho. I could be the executive of the office or the agency or whatever. Even if I make a purchase, it has to go through a financial component of government, which is its own separate thing. So typically what happens in order for this to happen, the unauthorized purchases has to be requested. Then you got to put somebody in place who's going to push through the unauthorized purchase for you. Because if you don't got that person who's going to push it through, they're just going to keep getting denied. So it's a very good chance that there's going to be a lot of co-conspirators in this matter, just because the nature of the crimes that's being alleged here and from what it looks like from the facts, you can't do that shit alone. You need multiple people to do it and to make it happen. Yo, Trump owns his properties. How can you compare Trump to Tiff Tiff? Nope, you're absolutely. See, I don't know. I think you missed the comparison. The comparison was marketing. I'm not comparing their business acumen because I mean, me personally, I'm not impressed with either one of their business acumen. You know, personally. But the thing I was comparison is I think they both are very good at marketing. They both are very good at getting a base of people to focus and believe in what they're selling. They know how to put the light show up, the smoke and mirror show for people to get emotionally involved. So that's the comparison. I think that Trump is definitely a better business person than Tiffany Henyard, and he's probably a little bit smarter than her because at least his self-dealing, he can hide it a lot better, how most politicians do. But that's the comparison. Is just I think both of them are pretty good at marketing to their target audience. It is what it is, and that I think that Trump's a great marketer because you stood up for him right now over a point that I didn't even make. I didn't even compare him as a business person. I was just talking about the ability to market to a target audience to get people to buy in. So that was the comparison that I was making on that end. All right, so let's go ahead and dive back into these documents real quick. All right, so we know the revenue was wild. General fund revenue and expenditures. Okay, this is the amount of money that they brought in from actual taxes that the township brought in versus what was spent. You can see, early on in 2022, like I said, the previous incumbent left on with a surplus. That shit lasted 1 year. Immediately the next year, they spent more than what they made. Now, the federal government can always live on a budget that spends more than it makes because they can print their own money. That shit don't really work like that for state and local governments. Most times, in order for a state and local government to be effective, you got to kind of be able to have that budget balance because you don't have the right and the ability to just print money and pull it out of your ass like the federal government can. Okay, breaking in the cars, that's what his record was? Okay, well, is breaking into cars a crime of moral turpitude? That's probably, I don't know. Let's see what they got on the books. That would disqualify somebody from running for mayor. Typically, we seen at the federal level because we seen when everybody was trying to go after Trump, the Constitution said high crimes and misdemeanors, and it was weird because they don't define what a high crime and a high misdemeanor is. Most instances for jobs like that is crimes of moral turpitude. So, assault charge, a DUI, aren't a crime of moral turpitude. That's a standard that they have on attorneys as well. Like, if it's not a crime of moral turpitude and you don't fuck with nobody money, yeah, I could have punched somebody in the face. I could have had a assault on an ex-wife, and they still gonna allow me to practice law because it's not a crime of moral turpitude. So it's probably the similar standard. Breaking into cars is a broke ass person crime too, though. Like, so that goes to show you. And again, when on the marketing side of the game, she probably used that shit to get people to buy in the race. She got 82% of the vote. Regardless of what her record was, she got 82% of the vote. She was able to connect with, and I mean, politicians do oppo research all the time. I'm sure her opponent knew of her criminal record and brought that shit up. So she was able to get 82% of the vote in spite of that. I think I saw her on, I did see a clip too, where she was like on Shark Tank or something with some badass idea. But the fact that she was able to get 82% of the vote is wild, but it goes to the point. I'm sure her opponent, they did opposition research. They found her, they dig into your background. They want to see if you got gambling problem, if you out here selling, shaking that ass for cash. They're gonna do all sorts of oppo research. And even in the fact that she had a criminal record, she was still able to win because one, it probably wasn't something that was disqualify her from running for office. Because I mean, breaking into vehicles, and it depends on. I know attorneys, I know people who went to law school with me and have been practicing law for over a decade now and are very successful who did worse shit than breaking into cars. And they deans of schools now who openly talk about it. So something like breaking into a car, especially if you do it on the younger side of the game, that shit ain't gonna be anything that's gonna stop you from doing something that's like. And we know that people really don't care about convictions. I don't know if she got convicted. She was clearly arrested, but people don't care about convictions. Just generally, it is not the worst thing to have in your background as a politician. But we can see from this slide, hey, at one point they were bringing in a lot of revenue from taxes and they were spending less than what they made. That shit lasted 1 year. Immediately when she came in, the spending went up. So that thing we want to identify is where did the spending come from? And this is revenue and expenditures. This is actually cool because you can see where they highlighted the police department. Well, why was the police department high? I'm about to tell you right now, looking at this slide, if I was a firefighter, I'd be mad as shit. I'd be like, look, yo, the police, the police getting all this overtime, their budget going up, all of this stuff. And the firefighter budget, look at the firefighter budget. That shit went down every year. The firefighter budget went down a couple $100,000 every year for 3 consecutive years. The police budget went up. Now, I know it's common for a police budget to go up, but damn, see, that's the other thing too. If you're gonna grease some palms, you got to spread that shit across the board. Like, you can't grease palms over here, but leave these people with dry ass, ashy hands. That's not how it works. So the vast majority of the spending, when we went to the police department, which accounts for all the phantom overtime hours that they had, and the general administration and administrative compensation. And there's also been stories out there about the staff that she's hiring. She hired some guy who's like a registered sex offender to have a position that essentially puts him around vulnerable population that he was convicted of taking advantage of. But those are the ones, media center, nothing strange. What else up here would bring out? What is this? Property, pension, preservation, engineering department, public works department. No, I can even see the public work. The only other thing that jumps out here is the general administration and administrative compensation because she paying her people and they probably getting raises. The police department because they finessing with the bogus overtime. The only other thing that jumps out as a large increase is the property preservation engineering department. No, the public works department. And the public works department budget is going to go up because public works are the ones who are responsible for public venues, things in the city. And that's one thing that she capitalizes on. She has a lot of events. She wanted to get funds to like build a park, and the Department of Public Works already had those funds allocated. So they were able to move forward with those projects. So that actually doesn't stand out in surprise. Right here at the top where it says general administration and administrative compensation, here's the finesse on how people pay their people, okay? We're going to show you, this is how politicians finesse and pay their people because I know I worked at this organization, right? I worked at an organization, a government organization, and I was in the upper executive level leadership. So at this time, I had meetings with the U.S. attorney for my state that I was in. These are persons who were directly appointed by President Trump at the time. So I'm pretty high up in this organization. A new agency head comes in because, a council passes this board. He gets his vote. He comes in. He brings in his people, right? This is how executives or people in these positions raise compensation. That's why you see that compensation go up so high. They say, hey, there's a pay disparity here, and we want to kind of clear things up. Because most times when you look at government organizations, some government organizations are weird. There's people who are supervisors who may make the same or less than the person that they're supervising. So when you got a structure where like supervisors are making the same as people that they're supervising or potentially less, that's a big opportunity for people to come in and finesse the paycheck on the side of the game. So what they'll do is they'll come in and say, hey, we have pay disparity across the board and we want to rectify this. So as a general rule, most government agencies say they want their supervisors to make 10 to 15% more than the people who they're supervising. And so when that happened, what you would see is people were getting pay raises. Middle management were getting pay raises. The supervisor to middle management were getting pay raises. Now, if I come out with a rule because there are pay indisparities across the board in my organization, and I say supervisors have to make 10 to 15% more than the people they're supervising, nobody gonna bitch and complain about that. You know why? Because that means essentially 80 to 90% of the staff are going to get raises. If my boss is making the same as me, my boss is automatically going to get a raise, whether they're good at it or not. And that raise just keeps going up. It keeps going up the chain until the executives at the top, you know what else they get? They get a 10 to 15% increase as well. So everybody pay and management is going up. And it's not going up because of performance. It's going on to make sure there's no pay disparity at the organization. And by the time that keeps happening, it gets up to the top, the boss's pay has probably increased significantly because they only say it has to be 10 to 15% higher. But you got to think they have to adjust everybody's pay underneath them. So by the time it gets to you and you sit at the top of that pyramid, your pay isn't going to be 10 to 15% more than what you were making when you came in. Your pay is going to be 10 to 15% more than what the person underneath you is making after you adjusted their pay based on everybody that falls underneath them. So that's the finesse when it comes to how they can adjust the compensation structure to keep increasing people's pay. That's just kind of what it is. And most times, in order for those things to happen, in most instances, clearly not here, but in most instances that I've been in, they actually had to go to the council to kind of get that budget approved. And the council would be like, oh, that makes sense. We don't want supervisors making equal to or less than the people they're supervising, because then it's not going to motivate them to do their job and do their job well. So that's kind of how the finessing go on that side of the game. Increased expenditures. This just shows that general administrative and administrative compensation expenditures have increased approximately 47% since fiscal year 2022, and we're in fiscal year 2024. That's crazy as hell. 47% is wild as hell. People essentially got a 50% raise for the most part. She took care of her staff. The same people who are going to snitch on her, but it is what it is. Increase in expenditures, liability insurance went up, miscellaneous. I'm interested in what miscellaneous spending was in fiscal year 2023, because it shot up in 2023 and went down in 2024 substantially. It went down in 2024, lower than what it was previously in 2022. Settlements, legal fees went down. Interesting. Telephone costs, blah, blah, blah. Nobody care about this. All right, this is the interesting one. Police department expenditures have increased approximately 21%. Her police department, in my personal opinion, I think she looked at them as her personal goon squad. I think this is an absolute shit show. This is something that should be on the boondocks, because it's actually terrible. Budget up, manpower down. Yeah. But this one right here is the biggest red flags, because one, I'm gonna just be honest. Like, I don't want to be I would never want to be a police officer. I would never want to be a police officer because that's a hard ass job. So I generally agree that police officers should be compensated and compensated well. But the amount of overtime that these dudes were doing, they were making more in overtime than their actual salary, which isn't unfathomable considering overtime is time and a half. But when you break it down and look at the hours of overtime that these people were allegedly working during the pay period, that shit was just impossible. Like, spread out your scam over a certain period of time so it's not patently obvious that you're just trying to finesse the system and finesse the game. And you can see from 2022 to 2024 how the police department expenditures went up exponentially. I'm going to say a lot of this is probably equipment and overtime, more actually overtime. All right, let's see. Increase police department. Within the police department expenditures, categories with large increases include, but not limited to, overtime is number one. Overtime is number one, and medical insurance is number two. Medical insurance, that makes sense. Overtime is number one. So in 2022, $800,000 in overtime. In 2023, that almost doubled, essentially $1.4 million in overtime. And then in fiscal year 2024, $1.6 million in overtime. We understand from a John Casper company manager, all credit card payments are recorded as other miscellaneous police department expenditures. So yeah, the police department that's stupid because the police department can't protect you. The only thing the police department can protect you from is like as serving as your actual detail if somebody try to run up on you. That's it. They can't insulate you from litigation. They can't insulate you from an investigation. That's not where the money is going to be spread. Like, let's just be honest. Do y'all think that a president is going to go into office and say, hey, in order for me to secure my power, one of the first things that I got to do is make sure I pay the military a whole shitload of money? No, that's not going to happen. You don't have to have, this isn't ancient Rome. It's not Augustus Caesar, Julius Caesar, and all of the, this isn't the triumvirate. You don't have to have the law enforcement or the military necessarily on your payroll because they're there already, because the military structure is just a part of government. So that's actually a foolish mistake. I'm not trying to give nobody the blueprint on how to finesse the system, but putting all of your resources by greasing the palm of the local police department isn't the best way to do things because they really can't insulate you from anything. The police department aren't the persons who's going to indict you, who are going to charge you. They aren't the persons who are going to be able to hire a third party like a former mayor of Chicago to actually do an investigation into you. The palms that should have been greased should have been the board of trustees. So that was technically a terrible error on her part. That's going to come back to probably kick her in the ass because now what are these police officers going to do? We've already seen them. When they get fired, they turn state witnesses. They want to become whistleblowers. They want to start snitching and telling and all sorts of stuff because everybody snitched. I've represented thousands of clients as a defense attorney. I've investigated and prosecuted probably thousands, not more as I represented, but thousands of everyone from CEOs to bank CEOs, pharmaceutical CEOs, to guys who committed armed robbery, to guys who got money, so much money that the rats eat it up and they live in foreign countries. Everybody snitched. Only 2 people in my entire career were like, nah, I'm not going to snitch. Of the thousands of people, clients, defendants that have flown across my desk, only 2 were like, I'm not saying anything. These police officers are going to tell because at the end of the day, nobody want to go to jail if you don't have to or if you can make your time less. Let's see what else we got. Chief Lacey and his overtime pay. This shit is wild. Chief Lacey's overtime pay. $39,000 year 1, almost $70,000 in year 2, almost $100,000 in year 3. And from May to current, he had about $12,000. Unfunded expenditures, blah, blah, blah. Let's get down to the bank balance. Okay. The Village has 22 different bank accounts. 22 different bank accounts. The majority of these accounts are designed for special revenue funds or bond escrow funds, funds that are restricted and cannot be used for general operation. Police, fire, pension assets are held in trust accounts. Shout out to them. That's smart. Most pension assets are held in trust accounts by federal law. So something like this, they can't screw over their employees, even though they fucked all the taxpayers. They can't screw over the employees' pension. The Village uses one account as its main operating account to pay the majority of its expenditures, and the account balance from April of 2021 was in a surplus of $1.5 million. June of 2024, it was $715,000, and it was essentially a $777,000 decrease over the funds. The account balance is down $2 million. That's crazy. In April of 2021, this account had slightly in excess of $2 million. In June 30th of 2024, the account has less than $4,000 in it. Cash balances of the general funds are clearly in the negative. Just going along with the trend, that's one of the slides we already saw. Let's pivot here to use of credit cards. Okay, the use of the credit cards is interesting. I actually just got approved for my work credit card, which I hate getting. I actually didn't even want to get my government credit card because it's just too much paperwork. I'd rather just pay it out of pocket than do some paperwork and y'all cut me a check and pay it back. But Tiffany Henyard would also get in the bag because not only she was the mayor of the Village of Dalton Township, she also had another role in the government that she was doing contemporaneously. In her annual salary that she was bringing in prior to taxes was like over $300,000. So she was definitely trying to run up a bag and then capitalize on it on the illegal side of the game. We are aware of 6 different credit cards that have been in use at various points in times from January 2021 through at least of May of 2024. And I'm going to talk about these credit cards because this is easy to find, to backtrack and figure out who did what with what credit card and who was the benefits of the $40,000 worth of shit that they got from Amazon. 4 American Express cards that appear to have been used by the police department. Statements associated with these cards were addressed to Ernest Mobley, Robert Collins, and Louis Lacey. Louis Lacey, who was the police chief, who was ousted. 1 American Express card for which statements are addressed to Keith Freeman, village administrator. These people are so fucking stupid. 1 Fifth Third card for which statements are addressed to the village. To date, we have received some, but not all credit card statements. Credit card use. We understand from blah, 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 company manager, receipts are readily provided. We further understand, blah, blah, blah. All right, credit card use. This is wild. Credit card use is interesting. While we do not have a complete set of credit card statements, there are some purchases that require further investigation. Some examples of notable charges identified to date are below. And it's funny because I actually saw a video. I was watching a video. I wish I could remember the YouTuber's name. But I was watching a video of a YouTuber, and he had a still shot. It was hilarious. It was like a still image of Tiffany Henyard, right? And in this image, Tiffany Henyard was wearing a dress. Then beside it, he had that exact same dress on Amazon. And he was like, I don't know what she spent this $40,000 on, but at least 40 of it was spent on this dress. I was like, oh man, that's actually the exact dress. It would be hilarious if that's what it was. But let's go ahead and take a look. If y'all in the comments, y'all let me know. Y'all give me over or under in 1 year. You think it's going to be under 1 year before she's indicted? We're not going to go with arrested. Under 1 year before she's indicted or over 1 year? I think it's going to be under 1 year that she's indicted. I think she's going to be indicted in under 1 year. But y'all let me know. Y'all go over or under on the indictment. Is it going to come within 12 months from right now or outside of 12 months from now? But let's go ahead and blow this up real quick so we can look at these purchases. All right. This is the thing that everybody's talking about, Amazon purchases. And we'll talk a little bit about these Amazon purchases. But on January 5th, 2023, was that Prime Day? When was Amazon Prime Day? They probably was running some like New Year's or after Christmas sale too. So they probably was trying to, stretch the amount of assets they could get with their monies. But early January, over $40,000 spent in Amazon. The second biggest one was Wayfair. Wayfair makes like furniture and design glasses, like these ones I got on. The Amazon purchases are interesting because I tapped my glasses and the music started playing. But I kind of dove in a little bit to these purchases because one of the things that they stated in this investigation, and maybe is on the next page, let me see. All right, this is for traveling. We already know they were staying in lush hotels. They said she was eating surf and turf, shrimp and lobster and steak and the whole nine. That's gonna be interesting. I'm actually read that. I want to know what the next steps are. But one of the things, let's talk about these Amazon purchases real quick, okay? She was, I know she wasn't using the Affirm Pay Now, pay over 6 months either. She was just running up the purchases. But the Amazon purchases, according to Lori Lightfoot's report, the village township doesn't have an Amazon account. Okay, so it's very strongly possible that these Amazon purchases were made for items that were personal items for an individual. Okay, now they don't have the receipts and all of the invoices to the credit cards, so they can't really put things together. And let me pull it up. Illinois attorney, no, not even the attorney general. We could look at the attorney general, but Illinois Office of Inspector General. All right, so let me pull up this web page real quick. We're gonna stop sharing that. We're gonna share this. Now, this is why this is actually what's interesting, and why one, I think Lori Lightfoot did a decent job. I think Lori Lightfoot did a decent job considering what the lack of resources she had. Okay. And this isn't uncommon. A lot of times, if something needs to be investigated and I work in the agency, so I may have a conflict, I would go to a third party, a non government entity to do the investigation. Most times, as a law firm, sometimes it can be consultants who have the ability to have investigators and attorneys. Sometimes it's a certified personal accountant. Why is that pulling up like that? Hold on. Sometimes there's a CPA who is doing, sometimes there's a certified professional accountant who's doing the audit or the investigation because they're good with numbers and tracking money and everything like that. So I think the presentation that Lori Lightfoot gave was good considering the lack of resources. What is her lack of resources? She has no subpoena power. She can't subpoena anybody to do anything. That's where the Illinois Office of Inspector General comes in. The Office of Inspector General is one of the agencies, along with the Office of Attorney General, who's tasked to protect the public, investigate fraud, waste, and abuse. But more importantly, they have subpoena power. What does that mean? It means that they can haul your ass in the court and say, hey, if you don't give us what we want, we're going to enforce our subpoena against you in court. And so Lori Lightfoot doesn't have that ability. So a lot of the records she won't be able to get. She has no ability, a complete inability to be able to get records from a credit card company. But as someone who was an employee of Inspector General for a city, for a state government, they have the ability to issue subpoenas to credit card companies, to financial institutions, to social media platforms. So that's where they're going to have to go to really track down this money. They're going to have to go to the Office of Inspector General or either the federal government through the FBI is going to issue subpoenas, which they have the power to do. If they haven't already, I feel confident that they probably already have issued subpoenas, because the great thing is subpoenas can be issued and there's no notice. There's only one unique circumstances where notice has to be given for the issuance of a subpoena, and you would know, like, oh shit, they are investigating me. But Lori Lightfoot essentially doesn't have any power to subpoena records, so she's going to be limited in where she can go. But the easy way to find out who was the recipient of these things that were purchased on Amazon is to subpoena records. Because I would do it this way. I wouldn't necessarily, everybody think you would go to financial records, but financial records are a little bit difficult, because if the government is subpoenaing financial records, like at a bank, there are certain notice requirements that they have to give. They have to give the owners of accounts depending on what records they're getting from a financial institution, the government has to give the owner of the account the opportunity to challenge them looking at your bank account. So there is some notice they're giving. So me personally, if I were leading this investigation, I wouldn't subpoena a financial institution. And I've been in that situation where, like, yo, I want to get these records, or I want to find out what's going on with this money, but I don't want to let the target know that they're being investigated. She already knows she's being investigated after all of this shit, but there are instances where I wouldn't want the target to know that they're being investigated. So instead of issuing a subpoena for financial records because there's a notice requirement, what I would probably do is I would go to Amazon. And it's like, Amazon isn't a financial institution. And I would go to Amazon and I would want to know, for these purchases made on this day with this particular credit card, where were they delivered to? Then once I found out where they're delivered to, now I can look through postal records and find out, okay, who are persons associated with this address, or who are persons associated with this specific post office box. Or once I found out the address, you can subpoena records from Amazon, find out the address where they were delivered. Then you can do what's called a mail cover. A mail cover is, hey, I want to do a mail cover on this address. So any mail that goes to your address, I'm going to get a photocopy of the front and the back of that envelope. So if I do a mail cover on you, so that's the route I would go. I'm not going to subpoena the banks because there's a notice requirement. And then Tiffany Henyard already knows she got a big ass bullseye on the back, but all these other people using their cars, they may have no knowledge. So I'm not going to the bank because I don't want to have to give them a notice requirement. There is one instance where where the government can subpoena bank records and there not be a notice requirement. And that's if a grand jury is already involved. And if a grand jury involved, they can go get your bank records and you won't know shit. But if no grand jury involved, most times there's a notice requirement. We're not going to go that route. We'll issue a subpoena. If I'm the IG or the Attorney General, or if I'm the Bureau, I issue a subpoena to Amazon because I want to know what addresses were tied to delivery of these particular accounts. Once I get the addresses, I can get postal records and find out who are the names of the persons associated with this account. Then I would do a mail cover on those addresses for 30 to 90 days. And like I said, a mail cover, literally all they're going to do, any mail that would go to that address, they're going to take it and give me a front and back copy of that envelope. So I can't open it, but I can see, okay, this person banks with Wells Fargo. This person banks with this place. So when it's time for me to actually go after the banks, now I know where all those financial records are held. So now I can go back and pin those purchases to an address, those addresses to a person, look at the mail that person is getting, determine what banks, where they had their financial accounts. Then the last thing I will do is request and subpoena financial records because now they're going to have notice. So that would probably be the best bet to go, and that's probably going to be the route that the feds go. Hey, $40,000 at Amazon, you can buy a lot of shit. Like you can buy a modular home, you can buy a gang of shit at Amazon for $40,000. And the way those purchases were is interesting because I'm assuming there were multiple large purchases to account for that 30-something thousand dollar purchases. So I don't think it was one thing worth $30-something thousand. It was a gang of shit worth $30,000. Then they cashed out that purchase. Then they made another purchase for Ford and another purchase for something else. But at the end of the day, Tiffany Henyard is the absolute worst. Let me take a look at this because I want to see what she has identified as her next steps. Because I'm going to be honest, she's very limited in her next steps because she don't have subpoena power. Next, that's a summary. Next step, obtain additional financial information to better understand expenditures, credit card spending, detail accounting records and reconciliations, check registers, detail accounts of inter-fund transfer and balances, additional details on existing financial policies and practices, travel, including Las Vegas trips in 2022 and 2023, Thornton Township. And that's Thornton Township is where she has her second employment, in addition to being the mayor of the Village of Dalton. But this is an absolute shit show. I think the over under on an indictment coming in the next 12 months is probably under. But there's no need to rush. There's no need to rush anything because all of this stuff is so fresh. Literally, they got at a minimum 5 years before the statute of limitation lapse on any of this stuff. That's one. Two, if they're co-conspirators, you can throw conspiracy charges in, and conspiracy charges allows a tolling of the statute of limitations, so you can stretch that statute of limitations out even farther. Also, RICO is probably going to be implicated because this isn't a one-man finesse. It takes multiple persons to do it. Right now, if I were an employee on a lower level in anywhere in the atmosphere of Tiffany Henyard, man, I'd be blowing the whistle. I'd become a whistleblower. I'd find out which program she's defrauding. I would find out which program she's defrauding. Preferably, I will find a program that she's defrauding that has federal monies into it, and I will become a federal whistleblower because federal whistleblowers get like a certain percentage of what's recouped that was stolen or misappropriated from the program. But it's going to be interesting. A lot of people are going to start turning on her because, hey, that's just what people do. This shit is a shit show. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Apparently, from the latest news I got, it said Tiffany Henyard is in the wind. Everybody's been reaching out to her for a comment. She's in the wind. Now, one question that somebody asked me was Tiffany Henyard aware of this report prior to it being released? I'm going to say yes. Now, because she actually tried to stop Lori Lightfoot from conducting this investigation. But I've been the person investigating an elected or appointed official before. And normally, before I publish the investigation, I actually give them a copy of it. And so I wouldn't be shocked if she had a copy of it. That's why she probably didn't show up to the damn meeting. That's why a lot of her staff wasn't present. But it's actually a common practice. And I just do it as a professional courtesy. Like, yo, yeah, we're investigating you, and we're probably going to prosecute the shit out you and throw your black ass in jail. But as a professional courtesy here, I'm going to give you a copy of the findings prior to we actually releasing these findings publicly, so you already know what's on there. We're not going to hide the ball from you. So that's actually common. I would be shocked, but I feel fairly confident that she probably had a copy of the report because it wasn't before it was published, because that's just normal practice. Normally, they aren't doing an investigation and holding on to the report to surprise you at the last minute. Normally, as a courtesy, you're like, hey, here's the report. Here's what we found, because we're going to say what we found anyway. So if you want to start throwing people under the bus, maybe this report help you fetch out who you want to take one for the team, because somebody's going to have to take one for the team. But this fraud is so high level, and it appears clearly obvious that it's orchestrated and directly directed by Tiffany Henyard. There's going to be no one to throw under the bus because no one is going to be of value. As a prosecutor, I want the highest person on the totem pole. And unless Tiffany Henyard can implicate, who would she have to implicate for me to even consider giving her a plea agreement that wouldn't have her in jail long as shit? It would have to be some government official higher than her, maybe a state government official who had some type of implication. Maybe if there was a kickback or something like that to maybe a state government official, if there was a kickback to maybe a very affluent businessman or something like that, maybe I would consider it. But nah, I probably wouldn't, because you just been too blatant. And me personally, in this black YouTube space, at the end of the day, I want to see this shit become a Boondocks episode if they ever reboot it, so we can see Tiffany Henyard get exactly what she deserved. Now, how is this going to impact the city? Because the city's fucked, pardon my language, but they're screwed because now that the city is at a deficit budget, in addition to this deficit that they got, about $6 million of checks that were essentially drafted and authenticated, signed, but haven't been paid to contractors who've done work for the government is just kind of outstanding. The city or the village of Dalton doesn't have $6 million to pay all of these vendors who perform these services. So one, the city is essentially, even though they haven't officially declared bankrupt, the city is essentially bankrupt. And when a city is bankrupt, this is the order that things happen. The very first thing happens is a hiring freeze. We can't hire any new people. Like if we're at a, if the village of Dalton has 200 positions that could be filled in government, for example, and right now they have 147 of those positions filled, hiring freeze. We can't hire anybody else because all of those vacancies, we're going to recapture that money for all of those. We got the money to fill those vacancies, but we can't fill them right now because we had a deficit. So hiring freeze, we're not hiring anybody else. We need 200 people, for example. We already got 147. The remaining salaries out there, we're going to recoup that money and try to apply it towards this deficit. So hiring freeze is the first thing. The next thing, they're going to just start laying folks off. They're going to go around and say, who's non-essential? Who the hell can we get rid of that's non-essential? And unfortunately, in these situations, the people who are probably going to be laid off first are the people who make the least amount of money. You would think it would be the opposite. Got you. You would think it would be the opposite. But essentially, it was a mosquito or something that was flying around earlier. It was annoying me. You would think it would be the opposite. But the people with the highest salaries are the last people that laid off. The people who are going to be laid off are the people who make the lowest salary. So hiring freeze, layoffs. After layoffs, they're going to start looking at what government programs can we cut. Like the fire department. Unfortunately for you, fire department, just looking at that spreadsheet, y'all look like y'all a target to cut. Ain't that many fires in Dalton. So they're going to start looking at what programs they can cut, whether it's an educational program, community services. One thing that they can't cut is the police budget. They can cut the police budget by saying no more overtime for police officers, or they could put restrictions on overtime to where police officers can't engage in no more than 50 hours of overtime during the course of a month or something like that. That's actually something that's common. The other thing that's going to be interesting is, so hiring freeze, layoffs, looking to see where they can make program cuts and to reduce the budget, and they're going to increase taxes. Everybody, if you live in the village of Dalton, your taxes are about to go through the fucking roof. Your property tax is going to go up because they got to pull in as much money as they can to try to decrease or increase revenue and decrease spending. So it's going to be a rough way for the village of Dalton right now. People who are going to suffer if you open a business, what it would cost to open up a business and operate a business, all of that shit is going to go up. All of the programs, all of that stuff is going to go up. Anything they can do to tax a taxpayer is going to go up at this point in time. But yo, that's it. I'm not going to circle back around on this Village of Dalton shit until one, the FBI execute a search warrant. That's probably what's going to happen, because at some point in time, the FBI is going to execute a search warrant on personal residences of people involved in this nonsense. That's when I circle back around. I don't think I'm going to jump on the Tiffany Henyard train unless some real stupid shit happens. Unless she come to the next meeting dressed up like Big Meech or something like that, and it's like some buffoonery / coonery going on, I might do a video on it. But nah, I think I'm going to ease up on Tiffany Henyard until we see either the execution of a search warrant, a grand jury is convened, and then we know that there's an indictment coming when there's something legally tangible that we can talk about. But it's sad that it's sad to see somebody, a young Black person who people probably initially viewed as a savior, crash out and burn just from not doing the right thing. But that's it. Hey, greed. People greedy as hell. is always greed. I do all of these videos on scams, and most people who get caught up in scams, some people are innocent, but most people who get caught up in scams are because people being greedy. They want something for nothing. They want a big ass return. And when you in the fraud, public corruption game, government employees, people want power because government positions don't really pay a lot of money. Like the governor of Minnesota makes like 120 something. He's a vice president nominee. Yeah, he's Kamala Harris's pick for VP. He made like $127,000 a year. Government officials don't make a lot of money, but they have a lot of power and a lot of resources. Trust me, if you get a government position, it's going to be a matter of time before a business owner or somebody comes to you and they're going to have a refrigerator full of money or those nice floor seats to the Lakers game, or hey, you want to go visit that condo? Trust me, I've been in this position with somebody like, hey, I can't go on this trip. Do you want to go? And I'd be like, man, that trip looked nice, but nah, they ain't gonna make an example out of my black ass. So I'm not doing it. So I know they'll make an example out of me, but there's so much power and opportunity presented when you have a position of power. It's very hard for people to just kind of turn that shit down. There's just so much money. It's hard for people to turn it down. You see it all the time. Oh, they already had it. Okay. Well, the feds probably already got her financial records then. I didn't even look at that. But if a grand jury has been impaneled, the feds probably already got her financial records. I can't speak for the township itself because what the FBI does and what the township does, or what the Illinois Office of Inspector General does, are two completely different things. And sometimes those investigations will run parallel. Sometimes they'll be two separate things. I've been on an investigation at the city or state level, and when the feds come in, they just like, yo, stop investigating them. We're gonna do it. And you just like, okay, have at it. So if a grand jury's already been impaneled, the federal government probably already has their financial records, because now that a grand jury is convened, they can actually issue a subpoena. And they know, because of financial bank laws and bank disclosures, that grand jury negates them having to give her any information or notice that they're actually going to subpoena her bank records. So they already got her personal bank records, and they probably already got the bank records and credit card records of everything that's associated with this credit card. Now, the state government may or may not have it. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And the other thing that's going to be interesting is, chances are there probably is or was a parallel investigation going on at the state level. How could I put this? Okay, I've investigated cases at the state level and at the federal government level, but let's talk about it from the state level. I've investigated cases at the state level, and something that we would do at the state level would be, hey, let's limit this person's ability to continue to commit fraud. So, okay, at the state level, we can control how much money this organization getting, or we can control at the state level how much is authorized on these credit cards, for example. So there's been investigations where at the state level, we would try to cut off their ability to continue to engage in fraud, but the federal government would be like, nah, don't cut off the faucet. Let them keep using the credit card. Let them keep defrauding the healthcare program. Let them keep defrauding whatever, the PPP program. Don't stop it, even though you can tie it off and stop it. Don't stop it. Let them keep doing it, because we want them to run up a bag of fraudulent activity so we can run up a shitload of convictions. So it can happen both ways. I've sat on both sides where I was expressly told by the feds, don't cut off the faucet, let them engage in the fraud, because we're going to hit them over the head big time. And I've sat on the other side and told them, like, nah, don't cut off the faucet. And then the other thing, too, if you cut off the faucet, there's no secrecy with this investigation. But if you cut off the faucet, it immediately alerts, like, wait, why can't I use my credit card? Or why did they lower my credit limit this month out of nowhere? So a lot of times, federal government agencies won't want to cut off the faucet to the spending. They want to keep that activity going because one, the more they fraudulently spend or steal, the more charges, the more serious the charges they become super high level felonies. But two, there's also some notice thing where if you cut the faucet off too soon, you could put the wrong person on notice that they're being investigated. So yeah. So they already had the federal search warrant. So yeah, that's a wrap there. Oh, federal subpoenas. Okay, all right. Yeah, federal subpoenas and search warrants are interesting. Both kind of the same thing, but not really. Search warrants, we going in to find the shit. Subpoenas, we actually being nice and asking you for shit. And I've actually seen, like, I've had cases where when we issued a subpoena somewhere, we would actually, like, this sounds crazy. Like, I remember one case, I want to say it was a physician's office, or this might have been a healthcare fraud case, but we actually sent agents. We waited to the daytime. We was like, let the doctor's office or whatever it was open up. And we sent agents to the office during the daytime. And the reason we sent agents to the office during the daytime is because we sent the agents there to serve them. And once they served them, we made sure those agents stayed there because we wanted to make sure that, because a lot of times I've had cases where someone has been subpoenaed and then the agents will go by and you'll see industrial trucks out there with just bags of documents being shredded. So it's not uncommon when a subpoena is issued, you have the agent served the subpoena, the agent sit tight to make sure that there's no destruction of evidence so they can immediately get those records. They like, hey, who's the custodian of records here? They go to the custodian and they just come out with boxes. But most times they aren't coming out with boxes of shit because it's 2024. Like, most times you're coming out with terabytes of data on hard drives and computers and laptops and cell phones, which is actually probably worse. It's probably actually better. It's probably actually better to have paper documents. You got some wiggle room with paper documents, but now when you do a search warrant, nobody's coming back with. I can't remember. It's been years since I had a case where it was just a lot of documents. Most times everything is electronic, but yeah. So, okay, I appreciate that. John, for dropping that off. Like, hey, your boy do some research, but hey, I got a 9 to 5. I ain't doing that in-depth research. But if a grand jury is already convened and subpoenas went out, the federal government 99.9% of the time has all of the financial records associated with those credit cards and have all of the financial records associated with their personal bank accounts. Because one of the big issues is going to be the commingling of funds, where you have funds going from government accounts to personal accounts. So they probably already had that stuff. And because that grand jury, they don't have to provide any notification. Well, that's, hey, he gonna get a good public defender, and hey, a public defender. I mean, I would be honest, he might not qualify for a public defender. He probably won't. It depends on how things play out. I did see that Tiffany Henyard essentially has a criminal defense attorney speaking on her behalf now, which is smart. Like, hey, shout out to her. One of the smartest things you can do is hire an attorney immediately and shut the fuck up. So, and not say anything. So if Tiffany Henyard doesn't speak at all after this, hey, that's a smart move on her behalf. He might not qualify because normally, if he's indicted, like right now, if he's not indicted, I probably wouldn't be too concerned with an attorney. He can, he'll probably have to cash out his TSP or his 401k or retirement account. But hey, if it comes to having a good, retirement or going to jail, I'm cashing my shit out. Like, I'm gonna cash my shit out and get Cochran up in here. So, but normally, because there's nobody's been like indictment and there's no criminal charges. But if criminal charges are presented, the court will actually have them fill out a document, and this document will say, hey, what was your income over the past 6 to 12 months. It'll have you list all your assets. Then the court is going to look at that and say, oh, based on this, you qualify for a public defender or you don't qualify for a public defender. I tell everybody, yo, always roll with the public defender initially. And they're like, well, why you say that? One, because I was a public defender. But if I had a criminal charge right now, and all the years of doing this in DC and a lot of big cities across the US, if I had to pick 5 people to represent me, if I was charged with a serious criminal offense, the very first 3 would probably be public defenders. 2 would be in private practice, and the very first 3 would be public defenders. That's just what it is. I mean, like, I know public defenders get a bad rap, but they've been doing it for a minute. They got experience. They know all the judges intimately because their offices are in the same office as the local prosecutors, the same office as the judges. They have lunch with these guys. So, I mean, but the reason I would say always get the public defender first is because you got an attorney, see what they could do, especially if you're money funny. If you're money funny, get the public defender, see what they do, have a conversation with them. If they actually get a plea agreement and you don't like it, now you're still free to retain counsel if you want to. I tell you, that's probably not going to happen, though, because if a defendant had a public defender and they had a public defender for the first 3 months and we're working out this negotiation and I negotiate an agreement and I say, okay, this is an offer I'm willing to give your client. And your client get the offer and he goes out and say, you know what? I'm going to retain counsel because I'm not fucking with that public defender. You retain counsel. I'm not giving a new counsel a better deal than what I gave the public defender. That's not how it works. The first deal you get is the best deal you're going to get. I don't give a fuck who I gave it to. If I gave it to a public defender, if I gave it to Robert Shapiro, if I gave it to whoever, the first offer you get is going to be your first offer. So a lot of defendants do themselves a disservice. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible for a private attorney to get a better deal, but generally, every prosecutor I know, myself, every prosecutor I interacted with, no, the first deal that they give to a federal public defender, a state public defender, is going to be the same deal that they give to the new attorney who was hired. Whether you pay them or not, that's just kind of what it is. The only way that plea agreement is going to get better is if new evidence comes into light that's favorable. Like, okay, you weren't guilty of 75 of these. You were only guilty of 32 of these or something like that. Or you give over some additional information that's going to help the government or another case or help us get more crimes off of the book. So, but I generally tell people like, yo, see what the public defender is going to say. If they are a shit show, don't rock with them. But if they sound like they know what they're talking about, you do your research, they give you a deal you think is a fair deal, you should consider it. But if you don't like it, go to private counsel. But chances are that private counsel not going to be able to get you a better deal. And a lot of times, in most court files, a lot of people don't know this, but in most court files, the plea agreements are kind of wrapped up in the files. So let's say I've seen judges do this. It happened very rarely. I've seen very few instances where a defendant had a public defender and he got deal A. Defendant was like, I don't want that public defender. I don't like that deal. Defendant goes out, gets his grandma to pull up her house because they ain't got no damn money, and gets paid attorney. He has hired counsel. Hired counsel goes to the prosecutor, and this hardly ever happens. I've seen it happen a few times. Hired counsel gets a better deal. So public defender got deal A. Client didn't like it. Hired counsel got deal B, which is a better deal than deal A. Both of those deals are in the file, right? Both of those deals are in the file. I've actually seen judges look at it and be like, oh, I'm not entering that plea, counselor. Nah, that's a judge can refuse to enter into a plea agreement. Like, I'm not entering into that plea because I think it's too much of a sweetheart deal. So I've seen that happen in the very few instances where, a defendant got a better deal by retaining private counsel. If it's a switch it prosecutor, then it'll work. I have had cases where prosecutor A offered deal A, prosecutor one offered deal A, prosecutor one left, or a new prosecutor is assigned, and they'll offer a better deal. Now that's something that's common, and judges won't really beat you up over if there's a new prosecutor in the game. He has a federal bankruptcy attorney representing him in court. The attorney is not a public defender either. But yeah, bankruptcy attorney, I can see that because if he court will bankrupt you. Like that's one of the things I tell people all the time. People laugh. Like I was just having this conversation about a concealed carry permit. Everybody want a concealed carry permit. DFD loves the Second Amendment. I'm a concealed carry guy, but I said if you got a concealed carry permit and don't got concealed carry insurance, you setting yourself up to be broke as fuck. The cost of litigation is expensive. Somebody try to rob me and I properly defend myself and exercise my Second Amendment right. And the local attorney general says, hey, we deem this self-defense. Great. But what if this guy's family sued me for wrongful death? Now I'm in court defending some shit that's probably not even a viable fucking case because I have to defend it. So that's actually a smart move. He hasn't had any criminal charges filed against him. He knows litigation is going to cause a lot of his assets to be eaten up. So that's actually a smart move to get a bankruptcy attorney, because the bankruptcy attorney's sole job is to try to protect as many assets as he can, limit his exposure, because this dude probably don't got a shitload of money. He not sitting on a shitload of money. Another person recently did that. What is the head coach for the Raiders? I watched a video, shout out to O'Shea Duke Jackson, but he did a video, and it was a video where I didn't agree with it because they looked at it from a wrong perspective. But it was a beautiful example of family law and bankruptcy law intervening. And it was Antonio Pierce, former New York Giants Super Bowl winning linebacker, is the coach of the Raiders. He's married. He invested in some businesses that went belly up. I think they was car dealerships. And now he like $28 million in the red. And his wife filed for bankruptcy. And the tone of the video was something. I even left that comment there. And the tone of the video was like, yo, his wife caused this dude to lose $28 million. And I was like, nah, y'all looking at this wrong. His wife actually trying to protect his assets, unless she filed for divorce. But his wife filing for bankruptcy separate from him, she's trying to protect as much as her assets and probably some of the marital assets as well. So as long as they didn't get a divorce, you know, that's actually a smart move. I think it's a smart move to make on their side. So bankruptcy attorney, in light of what's coming down the road or your potential criminal exposure and the amount of money you could be on the hook for restitution and all sorts of shit, is probably a smart move. Definitely a smart move. But yeah, you're not going to get a public defender for a fucking bankruptcy. Public defender can only defend you in cases where you could potentially go to jail. And I talked about this before. The only time you'll see a public defender in family court is for child support cases. I represented a couple people as public defender in child support cases because they will send your ass to jail for child support. So you're only going to get a public defender for cases that you can get jail time for. John Q. It has been mentioned that Keith Freeman is cooperating with Dalton trustees and their attorneys regarding some of those issues right now. So if that's true, that's a good sign for him in court. Yo, I'm gonna be honest, like I wouldn't really give a fuck about the trustees personally as a defendant. Like, I wouldn't care about the trustees because they can't promise you shit. Like all the shit that Lori Lightfoot doing, this is all for the public. This is because the public is the one who didn't know anything. The feds, I mean, you enlightened me. Shout out to you. They got a grand jury. They issue subpoena. The feds already know everything. If by the time a grand jury is convened, let me see, on average, in investigations that I was a part of or led or supervised, if I had to say, by the time the grand jury is convened, we've probably been conducting an investigation for over a year easily. Over a year easily. So I mean, it's dope for him to help the board of trustees, but this whole presentation isn't doesn't have anything to do with what his risk is going to be for potential criminal exposure. So, and that's why you can see. Hey, you said Keith had a bankruptcy attorney, because if he had a criminal defense attorney, my personal thing was I wouldn't give a shit about the trustees. I would be worried about what the feds are doing, because normally what happens. So y'all know how a federal investigation works. Let's say the FBI initiated this investigation, and the FBI, they may be doing it solo, or they could be doing a task force like a JTF. They call it a joint task force, where it could be FBI, it could be the Illinois Office of Inspector General, and maybe the Illinois Attorney General's office. But so it could be state and federal, but let's say it's just federal. This is how investigations work. If it's just federal, the FBI is going to do their investigation. Once the FBI do their investigation, they're going to write up an investigative report. They're going to carry that investigative report to whoever the local U.S. attorney's office is that they're representing. They're going to go to some attorney that they know probably prosecuted some cases before and say, yo, I got this case. Let me know what you think. The U.S. attorney is going to get the case file. It's going to be on their desk. They're going to read it, and they're going to classify this case. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is this case? Damn, this case is an 8. Let's do some things where we can get it to a 9, 10. So once they got a grand jury convened, they already probably got a U.S. attorney assigned to this case. So if he had a criminal defense attorney where he just got a bankruptcy attorney, I would be reaching out to the local U.S. attorney's office that's responsible for this district where the Village of Dalton Township is located. And I would be on the horn with them trying to cooperate. Like, hey, I'm going to turn state's evidence on the city girl, Mayor Henyard. I'm willing to cooperate. I'll give you all of my receipts. That, is going to be his best bet. Now, it's going to be favorable. They can stand in front of a judge and say he cooperated with the township, but he could give all of that shit to the township and to the board of trustees. And me as a prosecutor, I could be like, see, the thing is, he actually would lose some type of leverage, because what if he gives something up that's valuable to the trustees that the U.S. attorney isn't aware of? Now he essentially lost the leverage, because now the U.S. attorney found out about it, not directly from him, but they found out about it from a presentation that was done from a board of trustees meeting. So it's good to give information to the board of trustees, but if I was his counsel representing them, I would be like, man, fuck the board of trustees. They already got a grand jury. In order to get a grand jury, you got to have a U.S. attorney. If there's a federal grand jury involved, they probably already got your bank records. Let's reach out to the AUSA involved, and any information you would give to trustees, let's give to the U.S. attorney's office first, because you don't want to fuck up any leverage by giving up something that they weren't aware of to somebody who you really aren't obligated to give it to. That would be me. Yeah, that is correct. Can't add restitution to a bankruptcy, but that just goes to the point of he gonna be broke as shit, because if it is restitution, he gonna have to pay it regardless. It's not gonna go away from the bankruptcy. So your point is 100% correct. Yeah, the IRS gonna tear her ass up. The IRS is gonna tear her ass up, and if she got gifts, gifts also count as like gross income. Has a very broad definition. So yeah, it's gonna be a mess. Question: If Tiffany doesn't comply with those federal subpoenas for financial and administrative records, then what will the Fed's next move be? Will they issue an arrest warrant for non-compliance? They'll have to enforce it in court. And I'm gonna just be honest. Like, I personally hate enforcing a subpoena in court. I'll do it, and you'll probably have to do it for somebody like this. But hey, this is a federal subpoena. We have legal authority to request these records from you. you don't want to give the records, then the federal government would have to go to the court. And essentially they're going to the court saying that they're failing to comply with the subpoena, and there's actual jail time that could be associated with that. Your inability to comply with a subpoena is essentially like non-compliance with a court order, and you can get jail time for that. And that's what they'll go for. And like somebody like this, like I just don't like doing it because it's a pain in the ass to do. But she strikes me as the type of defendant who is going to make you earn everything. Like she strikes me as the type of defendant where Stevie Wonder could see that is like the evidence is probably not in her favor. Stevie Wonder can see that. But she has that personality right now. She strikes me as that type of defendant, which is rare, but those types of defendant who are like, I don't care what they got. I'm going to make them work for it. And if you make me work for it, if I got all this fucking evidence against you and you don't want to take a plea agreement I give you, you want to go to trial, that's fine. We can go to trial. But the minute I start, here's the offer. I'm going to offer you this. Here's your offer. You got offer A. The minute I have to start doing work related to trial prep, offer A is on the table. And when I go to trial, whatever the max is, that's what I'm asking for. And I'm not asking that it run concurrent. I want it to run consecutive. I want you, if you got 20 charges, I want all those charges, all those years to be stacked on top of each other. So if you make me prepare for trial, I'm going to rescind my offer. You're not going to get a better offer. And if I have to go to trial, I'm asking for the max on everything. I'm not giving you no breaks. That's just kind of what it is. But yeah, they can use the failure to comply subpoena. They can go to a court and essentially you can be thrown in jail for failure to comply with a federal subpoena. They arrested Mayor over 50K. No way she is going to walk. Yeah, nah, she's not going to walk. She's not going to walk. I don't think I don't know. Like, I don't know. It is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting if she's actually like behind bars. I think, I don't know. I don't know. She's not that smart though. So you may be right. Like, because what's going to happen is she's going to get indicted. She's a politician. She's going to be at her indictment. They're not going to take her in handcuffs and like she was Jeffrey Dahmer or Rayful Edmonds or something like that. Does she have enough? One, is she a flight risk? That's the first question. Is she a flight risk? Probably not. There's probably not enough facts right now to say that she is a flight risk to make her bond absolutely fucking insane. Because the whole point of bond, it isn't based on the severity of your crime. It's based on securing your attendance for this judicial proceeding. So is she a flight risk? No, I don't think there's enough. She doesn't have a history of flight risk. Does she have the means to be a flight risk? Yes. If she got assets, money, she probably has the means. So I just don't think she'll be arrested, but I don't think she'll spend any time behind bars. I mean, like, Trump was technically arrested when he went in there and took his mug shot, but I don't think she's gonna spend any time behind bars. I just don't think she's a flight risk, which isn't going to warrant a significantly high bond. If it doesn't warrant a significantly high bond, but she does have the means to be a flight risk, they'll probably just like put an ankle bracelet on her. Like, yo, you're going to be out. We're going to rock this ankle bracelet. That's just kind of what it is. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, it's all good. I appreciate you enlightening me. Like, yo, I got a 9-to-5 job with some serious shit going on. That's crazy. But so in light of that, hey, I'm going to do some research, but I appreciate y'all when y'all tune in and y'all enlighten me with some gems. Yo, if y'all found some value out of this, hey, do your boy a favor, subscribe to the channel, check out the content. It is what it is. I think that's going to wrap up the Tiffany Henyard tomfoolery nonsense that we got going on. I did see a video recently. I think I'm gonna do a separate video. I don't know if it's worthy of a live, but it was a very lowbrow scam that's going. I don't even think it was a scam. I think it was something that was done. I don't think it was a scam. I think it was something that was done to make it easy to rob people. And it's literally like in our backyard, in my backyard, right here in the area that I'm in. So that's probably gonna be the next video we talk about. I don't know if I'm gonna do a live because it might be a short one, but that's it. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, all the comments, all the 56 people in the room. Give this video a thumbs up. Y'all take care, be blessed, be safe out there. And if you're watching on replay and you like this content, check out the content that's going to pop up on the screen. There's going to be more content related to finances and attorney reactions. Peace.